while we are talking about character or plot driven stories, we have to talk about another show that helped me get massive breakthroughs through therapy, and that's BoJack Horseman. When we talk about shows that deal with mental health, this absolutely has to be on the list. It's a comedy that confronts every personal struggle you've ever had in a way that it's fun, but it's gut wrenching. Um, BoJack Horseman is one of the rawest, most powerful pieces of media that exists, and I say this with no hyperbole. It changed my life. Um, so here we go. Also, I will always forget that this is a Netflix original series because it's way too good for Netflix to have produced. But it opens with an interview where we immediately see how off color BoJack is. Obviously, it takes some time to get into how messed up he really is, but in the opening scene, he's just another washed up celebrity who says some weird shit. One of the best things about this show is that at its heart, its comedy um, is very direct. The things that end up being funny is really just BoJack being really vulnerable, but what's happening around him in that moment and his delivery lighten it up enough that it seems funny. He says something like, most people don't even get to do the Brady Bunch version of the thing they want to do with their lives. That wasn't a line from him, it was a line to him. But basically, how he spent most of his career was on a sitcom. And so therefore he's not really considered a serious actor. But someone points out to him that there are millions of people who want to do what you do that don't even get to do the bad version of what the dream is. And then we have this scene in the first season where BoJack kind of goes off about the military and the troops, and it's actually really funny. The funny part about BoJack going off about the troops not being heroes is because everything about that whole rant was correct. It was 100% absolutely real. Most people in the world are jerks. The military has the highest single industry sexual assault statistics of any other industry in history. Most troops are in fact jerks and not heroes. But you know, you say that to the average American and you're the bad person somehow. The show is great at depicting how media and news outlets prioritize stories. BoJack is in the middle of a full rant of incredibly great commentary, and the reality TV crew interrupts him to catch Mr. Peanut Butter with a bucket on his head. And I think that kind of commentary is it's not subtle. The commentary BoJack Horseman makes on lots of things is very in your face, and spoon fed to you, but not in a way where you're like, okay, this satire is telling me everything that I need to know in a way that's, I feel like I'm stupid. Obviously, the writers obviously think I'm stupid. It's just absurd because everyone knows that's how the world is, and society is the one that can change that, but we just don't. So I think that's really more what the commentary is. The MSNBC reporter covering a new education bill was interrupted by BoJack Horseman news. Like, the media prioritizes things that they think will distract us, not necessarily things that we need to know. And it's so hard rewatching the show knowing what happens. Season 1 is so tame compared to where the show goes. It gets heartbreaking. It took me a year to watch the last 6 episodes of the series because I just was not in an emotional place to do so. So rewatching it, knowing where it goes, is really tedious. BoJack immediately being happier with Sarah Lynn around is so sad to me because I know where their relationship goes. I know what happens. And you also start to see BoJack wanting to care about somebody. He wants to connect with something, but they are both so drugged out that emotional connection definitely isn't there at the beginning of their reunion. Sarah Lynn and BoJack hooking up has just always been horrible. it's so uncomfortable to the point where it's upsetting, because this is a child. Well, she's a grown woman now, but when they met and were working together, she was a child, he was a grown man. It's icky in every way possible. And the foreshadowing in this show is so on point, but it's so aggressive, and you really don't recognize it as that until you're rewatching the show. BoJack realizing that he has feelings for Diane is also really heartbreaking to me, because you can see how badly he wants to share his feelings for her. But he's so terrified of someone actually getting to know him and risking actually getting close to somebody that he just shuts down. He even said that when he left her a message, letting someone get to know you is scary, and he's still trying to do that. The other thing that really sticks out, especially early on, is how much Caroline cares about him and loves him. She's always there for him. She always goes out of her way to help him and get him a job when he asked for one. And when her agency was about to drop him, she did everything she could for him, even though he treats her like crap. Herb Kazaz. BoJack trying to mend fences with Herb is also an incredibly dark storyline, especially when you think about it in context of like real life. It also introduces Charlotte, which upon rewatch really hurts because I know where that's going. It just all feels really crunchy. The flashback episode is great because it also obviously establishes BoJack's past relationships. It does a great job of showing us how far BoJack has fallen. Like at the beginning, he was this sweet, dedicated actor with close friends who didn't drink because he wanted to be clear-headed, and he was super dedicated to his craft, and he wanted to be a serious actor, and he started in comedy clubs, and you know, he had a real story, you know, like a very average Hollywood, me and my friends are trying to make it in the business kind of story. And by now we've seen what he's become. He is an alcoholic. He is addicted to drugs. He is shut down emotionally. He has no one close around him that he really trusts or opens up to. And he's washed up. He hasn't worked in years. And you see kind of how the end, like at this point in the series, we didn't see how he got from point A to point B. But as the series continues, you kind of see how the show is also commentating on how Hollywood kind of does that to you. You've seen it with lots of actors, lots of child actors, especially coming out of Disney. Demi Lovato, Miley Cyrus for a while. There's just this thing that Hollywood does that crushes you and twists you into someone that you don't recognize. And then they ridicule you for it. And it's great commentary, but it's also really sad. When Herb gets caught, and he has to come out that he's gay, the protest that ensues is spot on. It makes no sense, and it's absolutely ridiculous because Herb has no hand in the writing and he has no hand in the direction. He's not actually in the show horsing around. So the fact that they're protesting the creator of it, who no longer has an active hand in it, is wild. Absolutely batshit. BoJack turning against Herb seems to be the real turning point in his life. Like, obviously, he and Herb have grown apart and fame was starting to go to his head. But him actually making the decision to throw Herb under the bus was the straw that broke the camel's back, and everything kind of went downhill for BoJack from there. His interaction with Herb was really heavy. Herb didn't care about being fired from the network, or even that BoJack didn't fight harder for Herb. He was upset because BoJack just left him and forgot about him. He never called. They didn't stay in touch. BoJack just ran with his fame and left his friend behind. And that's why I say I think that was the turning point in the series, turning point in BoJack's life, because he He made a decision to turn his back on his friend in a professional sense, but doing it also in a personal sense so that you didn't have to feel the guilt. Really shows that how checked out BoJack was by that point. And then on the way back from Herb's, BoJack kisses Diane, who at this point is engaged to Mr. Peanut Butter, which ends up really confusing her about her feelings for her fiance, which she clearly already had doubts about. And BoJack actively tries to find ways to sabotage their wedding. He realized, however, that Diane has made her choice and that it's not about him. And they kind of lose contact in the next couple of months, and their reunion is really awkward. It's awkward because BoJack reads Diane's book about him. The book that was supposed to be about BoJack. And honestly, he was completely right with his reaction. I will die on this hill. Diane did not do her job. She was hired to ghostwrite a memoir, and she did not do that. She wrote all of his shortcomings down, and it was about her and her writing and nothing to do with helping BoJack, and definitely breached contract. And maybe that is who he is. Like, maybe what she wrote down is real, but that wasn't for her to decide to do. She fucked up, and he had every right to be mad, and her reaction to him being mad was batshit crazy. When he says no one's ever going to see this book, it's not coming out, I'm killing the project. She goes to BuzzFeed and publishes some of the book. Another breach of contract. Like, who the hell do you think you are? You are an employee. Diane was wrong. She was being both a bad friend and a bad person, and him firing her was completely warranted and justified. Diane pissed me off so much in that moment. It was bullshit. Anyway, BoJack goes on this drug trip, and it's very telling because he sees himself as washed up. He sees himself living with Charlotte and having a family, living out his life, happy and settled down. And he wakes up from that in a parking lot in the rain, and coming out of his drug trip, causing him to apologize and confront why he hated Diane's portrayal of him. Now, again, I maintain that he was correct, but the reason he reacted so strongly was because she was right. The first season finale opens with BoJack Horseman's hero secretariat committing suicide, and it ends with BoJack getting a role playing him in a movie about his life, which clearly sends him into a kind of existential crisis, because BoJack is a character that has obviously contemplated suicide before. And so when Secretariat felt his career and public image was over, he committed suicide. And BoJack just got to the point where he felt that his career and public image was over. And then he got this job. So he doesn't really know how to reconcile those two things. Season 2 picks up the pace as far as how upsetting it's about to get. But for a show that I think has 6 seasons, it just gets darker and darker. And I will also be doing a video on the similarities between BoJack Horseman and Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, because I mentioned that those two shows are very, very similar to me. But yeah, thanks for watching my recap of the first season of BoJack Horseman. They're very short seasons, so these are going to be shorter videos. But thank you.